Welcome to the London Property Podcast. It is 2020 now. Welcome back. It's been a couple of weeks since we've done one of these. So we're going to talk about the news for the week. And the news for this week is obviously, because we've not touched upon it, the new government. So we've got a new government in the UK. Boris Johnson, the Conservative Party, got a very strong majority. So just to talk a little bit about how this is influencing the property market over the past several kind of years, really, nothing's been moving a huge amount. It's been very slow, very apathetic, and particularly over the past kind of year, with everything going on with regards to Brexit, people have been unable to make any kind of decisions. And now that we actually have got quite a clear indication of where the Conservative government want to take the country, and knowing for a fact that they are going to be able to do what they want to do because, you know, they've got a large majority. When I say they can do what they want to do, obviously they've got to negotiate with the European Union, but at least it's not going to get stuck in Parliament. So they've got more of a free hand to kind of pass the legislation that they want. And this, I mean, we've been back for several days now, and we've seen on the ground buyer activity and even clients who are now actually calling us to value the properties with a view to putting them on the market. I think both buyers and sellers are, I think, very relieved that they can see a bit of confidence on which way things are going, and I think things are gonna pick up going forwards, which is good. So that is it with regards to the election. With regards to what Boris Johnson does with any kind of tax changes or anything like that, I don't think anything's going to be announced until the budget. So
April.
So we've got, you know, we've got a few months of kind of certainty, knowing that everything kind of remains the same as it is now, and a bit of stability and a good market to look forward to with a bit of positivity.
It does help having clarity, and like Chris said, we've already seen this on the ground in the last couple of days, even into the new year. Market appraisals, people calling in wanting to get their property valued, and also buyer inquiries have been quite good. Even over Christmas we had quite a few that came in for properties. Having said that, having the clarity, and we've got a majority in Parliament, and things obviously will be able to progress a lot better than they have been in the last 3 years. I think the market is still going to be, especially the first quarter of the year, is still going to be quite slow until things kind of settle down. Matter of fact is buyers will remain price sensitive, and you know, in that respect, it's still going to be quite stable. We're not going to see a big kind of boost in terms of what people can sell their property for, because everybody's still price sensitive. The fundamentals are really the same. The only difference now is that people are not going to sit and wait another 3 months to see what happens with Brexit, because we've got clarity on that. So that's a positive, and we already see the benefits of having more clarity. And obviously as the year progresses on, I think slowly the engines of the London property market will start to fire up a little bit more. So that's positive for us, and we were relieved to see that finally we've got something which is more solid and more clarity, which is...
I completely agree with Marius. It's quite a sanguine approach that we're taking, because a lot of people either think it's all or nothing. They either think the property market's going to boom or the property market's going to crash, but it can be somewhere in the middle. I think it's going to be warming up and going back to somewhat more of a normal market. I mean, I had somebody say to me the other day, who knows a lot of my friends in the industry. He said, "Oh, I've been speaking to some of your friends who you used to work with, and they're saying to me that 2020 is going to be an absolute boom year." And I started laughing. I was like, well, look, you know, it's not the way that it goes from being terrible to absolutely incredible. I think you're right with what you say. I think it's just going to go back to a normal market. It probably will look like a boom year compared to what it was last year, because it was very dead and very quiet. But it's not going to be going back to like 2014, 2015. I mean, it could do, but I very much doubt it. So we're looking forward to this year. Marius has got a news article that you want to talk
yeah,
about.
yes. So it's an article which came out in December, so 2 weeks outdated a little bit, but obviously we had the Christmas break, so we weren't able to film. And it's an article which talks about the retail bank Adelmore, which they did some research. Then they analyzed 25 cities in the UK, and they looked at a few key metrics which were able to. They were basically trying to find out what were the best places for landlords to invest in the UK. Interestingly enough, I actually when I saw what the list was, I was quite surprised. Oxford actually came on top, which is not exactly the first thing it would spring to mind, given that prices in Oxford, just like Cambridge, are quite expensive, quite on the high side, which obviously impacts the yield for a landlord. But Oxford's rapid growth and investment in the city got him the top place in the UK for landlords to put their money into property. And apparently Oxford's main selling point for private landlords is that it has one of the largest private sector markets of all the 25 cities that Adelmore analysed in the research, which is really interesting. And 28% of the residents in the city are actually renting privately, which is really interesting. And obviously you've got the universities, the fact that rentals are quite high in Oxford given the big demand, and there aren't many vacant properties. So it's actually a very good market for landlords. On the second place you have Manchester, which is no surprise. I've dealt with properties in Manchester previously in the last couple of years. Manchester, is a great market for the buy-to-let sector and for landlords. Third place, you've got Edinburgh in Scotland, which is again a surprise, but it kind of makes sense. And then on fourth place, London, which again, it makes sense. What's really interesting is I would have thought Liverpool would be up there in the top 5 or whatever, but it isn't, and it makes sense if you look at the metrics that the research and the Adelmore Bank looked at when they analysed, and they came up with this 25 list from the research. In London, it makes sense why it is up there, despite obviously the high entry point for landlords. You're talking double or triple the entry point that you have in a place like Manchester or Liverpool. But London is London in many ways. So it has all the key fundamentals to make it a very, very good market for private landlords to invest in. So yeah, that's quite an interesting bit of research. And the research also looks at how the UK property market is made out of singular markets. So you do have, London in many ways, it's a market on its own. It acts completely different to what the northwest or the northeast of England would react when it comes to economic factors and all these things. But yeah, so apparently the best places for landlords to invest privately in property: Oxford, number 1, Manchester, Edinburgh, and London. Those are the top 4. I'm not going to go through all 25 because we'll be here for another while.
So yield or capital gain?
Yield.
For yield.
Yield. Yeah.
Well, that's probably a reason why London is 4th place. I'm quite surprised that London is at 4th place.
I was quite surprised, but they looked at 5 metrics.
Yeah.
So
yeah. Saying that, the yield in London, in central London now, is actually relatively quite reasonable, being in the areas that we work in, 3.5%, touching on 4%, depending on the property, which is quite good, considering some of the cities in the world are 2%.
Exactly.
1.5%.
So quite interesting, and if you are looking to buy property for investment, then we'll put the link of the article so you can look at the exact 5 metrics they analysed in the whole list of 25 cities.
I think it's great to know, because when some people are watching this or listening to this podcast, maybe they want to invest in London but realise, do you know what, the size of the deposit they need or whatever, they're not going to be able to kind of make it.
Yeah.
So Oxford's still very expensive, by the way.
It is.
It's almost, well, it's not comparable with London, but it's not that far behind. You know, for a 1-bedroom flat somewhere in the city centre, I'm pretty sure you're looking at like what 300
around that. Yeah. Cambridge is
like
the same.
Cambridge is similar.
I've lived in Cambridge, and Oxford and Cambridge are in many ways on par with London.
On par with London, yeah. So very interesting stuff. All beautiful cities though, all great architecture.
Of course, yeah.
And very well known internationally, which I think is quite interesting.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah. So there you go. Top. Well, we only covered the top 4, but that's it. And
so next section, we've got your question answered.
Yeah.
And the question that we've got for this week is, let me just find it
from Mr. Chen.
Yeah, got it here, Mr. Chen, who's asked. Mr. Chen's got wooden floors in his apartment, and he's just discovered that he's got a breach of his lease for having the wooden floors. The freeholder's unaware of the issue, and he's asked us, should I sell it like this or carpet the property before selling and rectifying the problem?
Valid question.
Firstly, I'd ask him to speak to his lawyer if I wanted to be completely technical about this.
Yeah.
But how would you? I mean, we get this a lot. It comes up a lot. You know, when somebody's buying a property, it's got wood floors, but generally speaking, 90% of the time, the lease will restrict wooden flooring.
Yeah.
So how would you go about answering that?
Well, first of all, we would suggest to check with the lease and see exactly what the breach is and
the wording of the lease
and the wording of the lease. Yeah. And like Chris said, consult with a lawyer, because they'll be able to really look at it properly and give you the best advice. But in a summary, we would recommend, before trying to sell the property, rectify any breaches in the lease, and that means reaching out to the freeholder. It's about communication, it's about being transparent. See if you are in breach of the lease, what solutions you have to basically be able to quickly put the property on the market to sell it. So speak to the freeholder, look at what the breach is. If it is like Mr. Chen with the wooden floors, it might be, if you have a conversation with the freeholder, it could be just carpeting, or it could be that you need a license for the wooden floors.
I was going to say, first of all, if you like the wooden floors, I'd ask the freeholder if there's any possibility that you can get a license.
Yeah.
And what would happen there is the freeholder might send the managing agent round or a surveyor to look at what you've done. He might say, put a certain type of insulation down. He might not. He can turn around and say no, because the lease is the lease. He doesn't need to alter it or vary it. But yeah, I think a license is the first port of call.
Yeah.
If you can't get that, basically, long story short, there's no point putting a property on the market which has got wood floors and it's a clear breach of lease, because the buyer solicitor will pull up this point, and then ultimately, you know, you're going to have to kind of explain how you're going to get around or rectify the problem, because if the purchaser is taking a mortgage, the mortgage offer is technically not going to be valid. So the buyer's not going to be able to buy the property anyway. So therefore you're left selling it to a cash buyer, and even a cash buyer, yes, they can just go ahead and buy it, but when they come to sell, their lawyer will advise them you might not be able to sell the property. So just address it up front, straight away, immediately.
Definitely.
And it is quite kind of infuriating, isn't it, to agents like us, when we've done, say, 100 viewings on a property, eventually found a buyer, negotiated term, everything, and then, you know, this comes up halfway through the legals and the client hasn't even told us about it. So it's good that Mr. Chen asked about it. And
I think
it's common sense, really, isn't it?
Yes, definitely rectify any breaches in the lease, because in the conveyancing process it will come up, and you would have wasted so much money and time to get to that point and basically end up with no property sold.
So now the last section of the podcast, we're going to be talking about a new listing of the week.
Yeah.
And this week it's a flat that we've just taken on the market literally yesterday in Holland Park, in a block called Park Court, right next to Holland Park itself. It's a 3-bed, a ground floor unit, just over 1,000 square feet, about 1,080 square feet. And it comes with a garage as well that's got charging for electric cars, which is obviously
cool.
Yeah, is pretty good. In total, you've got about, I think it's 1,250 square feet, including the garage. So this block, Park Court, it's got a porter. The building's, it's got a lift. I mean, it's a purpose-built block with a lift, but a ground floor anyway. Overlooks beautiful communal gardens and renovated to a pretty high standard. The client's moving back to Marbella, retiring, and it's a lovely flat. What do you think about it?
Yeah, it's a great location. It's right beside. This is the Design Museum, the
Kensington
British
and Chelsea Design Museum.
There you go.
I was there
literally
on the
next door. Yeah,
yeah.
Exactly. One thing which is also going to be a benefit for anybody buying this property is the fact they're going to completely redo the communal parts. So they're going to make the entrance and all the communal parts really modern with marbles on the wall and on the floor. So it will actually look a lot better, the communal parts.
Don't get us wrong, it's already quite nice.
It is, yes.
And the outside of the building's been renovated already.
Yeah.
But they're just going to put finishing touches
exactly
to it.
So it's already going to benefit the future buyer. They don't have to pay anything extra because it's already covered by the sinking fund.
Yeah.
The exterior, like Chris said, they've spent, what was it, £450,000 like a year ago to redo the communal, like the outside of the building. It's a modern flat, dual aspect, which is quite good. The layout is very nice. You know, you walk in, everything makes sense. It's not a funky, weird layout which doesn't utilize the space very well. Dual aspect, lots of natural light. I mean, yesterday was quite a grey day, and it wasn't. It was very bright indeed, even for a ground floor flat, because you don't have anything obstructing the views. So we're quite excited, and we're really looking forward to get the pictures. I think they're getting done today.
Pictures are getting done today.
So by the time the vlog's out, we will have had the nice photos for it.
We forgot the price.
Well, yes.
1.75 it's coming on the market for, which is in line with properties in that particular area. So,
yeah. And it's
good.
It's share of freehold.
Share of freehold
is huge as well.
900 and something year lease.
Yeah.
Ticks all of the boxes. It's a good flat, and it's the second listing that we've taken on so far this week. So
yeah, it's good, and we're going to be obviously active in taking more. So for every new vlog and new podcast that we have, we're going to have a very exciting listing of the week.
One listing every single week, cherry picked. For you out there, so you can see it just before it hits.
Exactly.
Its market.
And do remember that for previous podcasts and vlogs, every time we put a property on listing of the week, the following week, I think literally 90% of the time we actually sold it the following week. So we do cherry pick these, and we've emphasized this enough. We don't just put any property that we want to sell. I mean, we put stuff sometimes even way before we have the photographs, like this flat and the flat in Palace Court, which we had several offers on. So we do kind of recommend really good deals. So anybody who's watching, anybody that is in the market to buy really good property in prime central London, then we obviously kind of give you guys a good before it goes to the market. So that's quite an advantage for anybody watching, anybody wanting to buy property. We're here to help. I guess that concludes this week's vlog, the first one for 2020. Many more to follow, one every week. We obviously thank everyone for paying attention, listening, watching this, if it's on YouTube or on Spotify or Apple Podcast. Your feedback and comments are very much welcome. We want to provide as much value to you guys as we can and improve this as we go along.
Yeah.
But
And I just say, if anybody wants us to talk about anything in particular, or they've got any questions, just drop them either to Marius or myself, and we'll answer it. On the
social
podcast.
Media links in the description, so you can really follow us and reach out to us on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, whatever it is. We're there. We're here to help. And like Chris said, any feedback, or if you have any particular questions. Funny enough, remember the guy who messaged me on Facebook like 2 weeks ago asking about lease extension?
He was buying a short lease.
It's great, and I was like, oh, this is awesome, because we don't have a huge audience at the moment, but I guess we're doing the right thing if people already are reaching out. So please, any questions you have, we're here to connect with you guys.
The London Property Podcast is relatively quite new, as Marius said. That's the reason for the small audience, but it's a growing audience, and it's we're really getting there. And we've got eight podcasts out so far. By the end of the year, we'll have 52.
We'll have a lot more. And thank you so much for paying attention
and listening.
See you guys next week.
Yeah.